Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge the situations going around in the world, such as in Lebanon and the current COVID situation as well. These are really unprecedented for times, and being like the next generation of future legal professionals and people who want to create change in the world, I think it's important to know that yes, it is scary, but it's just more motivation for us to do better and be better and work harder. So we're gonna start off with our first speaker. Her name's Iqra Khalid. She's an MP and lawyer, and then we'll be moving on to another lawyer, Nancy Burton-Vulovic. And then we have two paralegals speaking, Negar Ghiabi and Everton Torres. We have two of our executive team members also present. We have Daisy and we have Wanya. So if you guys just want to speak for a couple of seconds about why you wanted to join the platform, like where you see yourself in the future.
So my name is Vanya. I'm second year social psychology student at McMaster. I joined this platform because I want to learn more about the legal system and like what other people's perspectives are regarding the legal system. And yeah, my future goal is to like study paralegal. I'm still not sure 100%. And yeah.
My name is Daisy. I'm a second year poli-sci student. I joined this platform just to help bridge the gap between the questions that students might have and the legal profession, because there's not a lot of resources out there, especially at our school, which is McMaster, just to help, although I know right now we have people present from different schools as well. So yeah, and my future goal is to be a lawyer.
Yeah, so with that being said, Precedence for Subsequence is essentially just a platform to breach that gap between students and actual professionals and how we can get there and become the next generation of change makers. So we're gonna have our first speaker, Iqra Khalid, speak a few minutes about how she became a lawyer and her educational experience. So Iqra, could you please tell us about why you wanted to become a lawyer?
Absolutely. Actually, when I was in university, I wanted to become a journalist. That was my real passion that I wanted to pursue. My undergraduate degree was in professional writing and criminology. And when I graduated, I started writing for a few publications, but really wasn't able to find any meaningful, substantial work. And I realized that maybe my writing isn't as good as I thought it was. I started working for an immigration firm, and that's where I really fell in love with the law. And that's when I decided to write my LSATs. So I graduated from university in 2007, excuse me. And then I wrote my LSAT for the first time in 2009. Now I wrote my LSAT twice. The first time I didn't study at all. I just wanted to see what this was about. And I wasn't 100% serious if this was where I wanted to go. I wrote the LSAT, I got a horrible score. But at that time I had realized, you know what, let's put in the effort and let's do it. And then when I wrote it the second time, I did a lot better than I had the first time. It is definitely a challenging exam. I didn't take any tutors or any courses to help me study. I kind of a lone bird. I tend to study on my own a lot better. And I did. I put in a lot of effort, went through that. And then I went to law school in the US. I went to Thomas M. Cooley Law School. And the reason was I was being offered a scholarship as opposed to Ottawa U, where I also had the option of going. And the program at Thomas M. Cooley was, it would have my JD in my hand within 2 years, which was a big deal for me. I just wanted to be back in Canada and kind of moving on with my life. I was about 24 at the time that all of this was going on, and I felt that I was already too old to be in school, which is not the case at all. So after I graduated, after I finished my courses, I had a year and a half at Cooley in Michigan. I started to volunteer or intern at the City of Mississauga's legal department, where I got to have that firsthand flavor as to what law was really all about. And then after I graduated, I stayed on with the city of Mississauga to do my articles. I did a clerkship there as well. And it was through, while I was working with the city of Mississauga, that I wrote my NCA exams, which are the accreditation exams, because my degree was from the US. And I had to write 4 exams. They're not too bad now that I've passed them, obviously. And then after my articles, my professional responsibility course, and then obviously the barrister and the solicitor exams, which I have to say are probably the most difficult exams that I've ever written in my life. And it's not because the content was hard, it's because the endurance, stamina. It's about a 10-hour experience per exam. And when you walk out, you're just like, oh my God, did I pass or fail? And you just don't know until you get your results. But thankfully, I passed both. I was called to the Bar of Ontario in June of 2015. And at that time, I had also become the nominated candidate for the Liberal Party of Canada in my riding of Mississauga Erin Mills. So I was elected as a member of parliament in October of 2015. So I didn't really practice much as a lawyer. But I can tell you that in these past 5 years, having been a member of parliament, my JD has come in so helpful. I chair the Justice Committee in Ottawa, and we deal specifically with the criminal code, the Constitution. It's very legalese heavy, and you get to see and understand not only the impact of the law in terms of and kind of contrast it with the writing of the law. So I can tell you, based on my experience, that a JD, like a law degree, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go and practice law. There are so many different avenues that you can pursue with this education. And the most important thing that you can do for yourself, I think, is to invest in yourself and educate yourself, because that education never goes away. And so, here I am, I guess, how many years later, 2009 to 2020, 11 years later, having started that whole process and finding myself to be quite successful with the education that I was able to put myself through and hopefully encourage all of you to do as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting how like you went from one legal field to governance. So some common questions that we're having asked is, in what year should students prep to write the LSAT? And what major did you do to get to becoming a lawyer?
So this was one thing I went to York University, and a lot of the students there that I was friends with were practicing or were taking majors that were easier, that would get them the higher GPAs that they required to get into law schools. Me, not so much. I did professional writing and criminology, and they were challenging in their own right. And I was a bit of an activist throughout school, so classes were kind of secondary on my list of things to do while I was in university, and my GPA was a little bit lower than I would have liked. It was at 3.25, I believe, back at York. So I think that what's really helped me with my undergraduate, connecting it to my law degree, connecting it now to my political career, my professional writing undergrad that I did, it really helped to give me a useful skill that I was able to use throughout law school, and I still use very regularly in drafting so many different briefs, in formulating my arguments, and whatever way that I need to communicate effectively. That professional writing degree, it really did wonders for me. I really appreciated it. And then the criminology, I was just really interested in criminal psychology, which I now use as we continue to shape the criminal code and look at the policy and regulations around the justice system. And so like it really worked out well for me. So my advice to people that are trying to find out what to do in their undergrad, knowing that you're going to be in going to law school, is to find that passion. Like, what do you want to what do you want to complement your law degree with? What are you passionate about? And kind of go down that path. I think your GPA comes secondary to what your passion is. And if you focus on what you're passionate about, you'll end up getting that good GPA. But more importantly, you'll be able to use your law degree or practice as a lawyer within that field that you're so passionate about.
Yeah, of course, because I know like some people do that, like where they choose an easier major and then they get a higher GPA. But at the end of the day, like what you like, you only get to do it once as an undergraduate. You mentioned that you did work at an immigration firm. So what type of experience is ideal to have prior to applying to law school?
Well, I was technically a mature student because I had that 2.5 year gap between graduation and applying to law school. And so my work experience did count for something in my applications. But for the most part, what I found more and more when I was applying, and this was a really long time ago, guys, I'm ancient now, I feel. You know, so I remember that the universities would ask for, what are your extracurricular activities? List them, but we only care about your GPA and your LSAT score. I think a lot of that has changed now. I think that universities are really looking for more well-rounded students. And quite honestly, a lot of people have some really amazing GPAs and some really amazing LSAT scores, and you need to find something that sets you apart from all of those students from the competition perspective. But from the just from the lived experience perspective, I don't mean to be ageist, but you know, somebody who's 19, 20 years old goes into law school, 3 years later becomes a lawyer. At 25 years, all you've done is basically study. And I think that there's something to be said for that lived experience, for that extracurricular activity that really helps you to understand the issues that you'll be arguing in court, to understand the clients that you'll be dealing with, you know, as in the future, as you're that you'll be supporting, that you'll be going up against. So I hold a lot of value for extracurricular, for something other than school, to help build you and your character as you go into this very noble profession. I think it is an asset, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure, because it gives you outside exposure that you wouldn't have necessarily had otherwise. Do you have any advice on writing a good personal statement?
A good personal statement. I'll tell you a story. I'm sorry. So when I was becoming a candidate, I went to candidate college. Well, just, you know, a couple of people that were okay. As a candidate, you need to write a 1 minute statement about why you're running, and then you need to condense that into what's called an elevator pitch, a 30-second statement as to why you're running, why should somebody vote for you. And I cannot begin to tell you how difficult that was for me. I was not able to put into writing why I was running. And to date, if you ask me to do an elevator pitch about myself, I'd be like, I'm a young woman, a lawyer, an immigrant, and I love Canada, and I want to represent my people, and that's just really lame. So, you know, the personal statement is just that. It is personal. Putting yourself onto paper is probably the most difficult thing that anybody can ever do. So I'm not sure if I have any advice for how to write a good personal statement, except to say to be genuine. Because, you know, as an employer now myself, I can read when somebody's not genuine. And I can read between the lines of a personal statement of the passion that kind of comes through, of the sincerity of the applicant that kind of comes through as well. So other than that, I really don't know how to guide you to write a personal statement, other than it should be personal, genuine, and passionate.
Yeah, and I don't think like there can be any strict advice on that because at the end of the day, you know yourself best. What are some ways that one can be sure that law is for them, especially as an undergrad student, where there's so many pathways open for you?
That's a good question. And it just goes back to it. Unless you do it, you will not know. I know a lot of law firms take in undergrad students over the summer to intern or, as a part-time job kind of thing. And I recommend that you apply. Go and get your hands dirty. The Mississauga Legal Aid Society, they recruit volunteers to come help them with the most vulnerable. Go and get your hands dirty. Go figure out if this is what you want to do, and you won't know by reading books or listening to other people. You'll only know when you're sitting there across from your client, taking the notes and trying to understand if this is what you see yourself doing 50 years down the road, and if you'll still be that passionate about it 50 years down the road. So get out there, volunteer, and have that lived experience. Without it, you won't know.
Yeah, of course, that's great advice. And what type of extracurriculars, as you mentioned, you were really active in your school community. So what type of extracurriculars would you recommend for those who are currently in university?
Well, I can tell you about the extracurriculars that I was involved in and kind of extrapolate from there. Throughout high school, I wrote for the school paper. I was part of the debate team, the Model United Nations team, and I used to volunteer for the library because my dad's a librarian and I love reading. University, I did food banks, women's shelters. I was part of a number of clubs, the Pakistani Student Association, the Indian Student Association, the Muslim Student Association. I was an ambassador for the alumni program for the school. When we got to rub elbows with all the donors of York University and to represent the school at corporate events, etc. And I still continued to write because that's where I felt like that's where I needed to go. I wrote for a number of different publications, but there was no kind of single track as to what kind of activities I did. I didn't limit myself to anything. I tried to get my hands on as much as I could, and that's really what I think you should be doing is to find your passion. One of my friends, great guy, he felt that he wanted to be a lawyer. He went to Osgoode Law School. His GPA was a lot better than mine, and his LSAT score was a lot better than mine. Went to Osgoode, did the whole 3 years, did his articles, and then when he came to write his barrister and solicitor exams, he froze. And he was unfortunately unsuccessful the first time. And then whenever he would go to register for the second time, he would have a panic attack. And now, many years later, has decided that law just really wasn't for him, and he should have known a lot sooner because he was a lot more interested in music and music history and instruments, etc. And so, if he had gone and volunteered or done some work within that industry, then he would have made that decision a lot sooner rather than later. So it really doesn't matter what kind of extracurriculars, in my opinion, that you should be doing. You just be exploring everything that's out there.
Yeah, for sure. Like, as long as you have that motivation and that urge to do well and be like you want to be in this field, then there's nothing really stopping you. So do you have any other advice, like just in general? And what kind of law did you end up practicing?
I did, what is municipal law? So I did a lot of writing bylaws. I did real estate for the city of Mississauga, easement, property, and development law. I also did the provincial court. I was a prosecutor there as part of my rotation. And civil litigation was a big part. I was a junior litigator within the city of Mississauga. And I can tell you, if I went back to practice law anytime, I would be a litigator. I love being on my feet. I love watching the other senior counsel, and they were all senior counsel. the other side, underestimate this little girl who was there, and just kick their butts. It was so much fun. I remember one time I got into an argument with a judge, which is something that you should never, ever, ever do. About the sentence that she had given to this person, and I was reading the law back to her, and she put me in my place so fast. And you know, like after that, I was like, all right, I need to, you know, have some humble pie, and life will be good. But you know, I love practicing the law, and I am looking forward to get back to it. And that's really, I think, the best thing that could have happened to me was for me to really hone in on and discover what I'm passionate about as an individual, as a professional. And, you know, I see so many people going through life not really sure about what they're passionate about, what they should be doing, not knowing, just being lost. And I know that everybody has their own time for discovery. I didn't discover my passion until a number of years after I had graduated from university, and then a number of years after I had graduated from law school. I have not been afraid to change my careers or to kind of diverge from the path that I had put myself on at any given time. And so I think that you should, one, be kind to yourselves, two, find your passion, and three, don't be afraid to be flexible with what you think your passions are. But yeah, those are kind of the general advice that I can give.
That's some really solid and amazing advice. So thank you for speaking with us today and taking the time out of your schedule. It was really inspiring and very motivational and encouraging, especially as like students who are given so many options as to what we want to do. And there's so much coming up as to different fields, different career pathways. So as long as you have the mindset, law can be a field for anyone.
Thank you, Maureen. Really appreciate that. And for everybody who's watching, Maureen is a wonderful volunteer, very, very passionate person herself. I'm very dedicated. So, you know, I love having you and then seeing you doing great things in our community. Thank you. And if any of you ever want to get some government experience, always feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to take on volunteers. I do take a couple of interns every summer as well, except for this summer because it's a pandemic summer. But yes, do reach out, and we're happy to continue to help.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So now, with that being said, we'll be moving on to our next lawyer, Nancy Burton-Vulovic. Okay, so can you please tell us how exactly you got the motivation to become a lawyer and what was your pathway?
Well, I'm old. I mean, Iqra made comments about being, believe me, she's not old. I'm old. And way back when I decided to go to undergrad, I was going to be a zoologist. So I went to U of T. I did 2 years of zoology. I discovered I was allergic to formaldehyde. This was a very bad thing because I was in these labs and I had all kinds of terrible things. Also, I was tired of dissecting animals. So I asked the professor at that point what else I could do because I really didn't want to do the physiology lab that involved live animals and frogs and electrical stimulation. And he said, well, there's this newfangled computer thing. Got to remember, I graduated university in 1979. So at that point, there was no such thing as microcomputers or the net or any of that stuff. So I ended up working with punch cards and computers, and that was great. And I ended up going into that. And then I moved to Sarnia, Ontario. And I ended up teaching a course called Introduction to Non-Traditional Occupations for Women because I had a BA and I had no idea what to do with it. And it was a job. And I had never had a non-traditional occupation in my life. But, okay, so I had a bunch of women who came in who wanted non-traditional occupations, and they were primarily from the St. Clair Reserve. They were a lot of First Nations women. And my job was to go around to industry in Sarnia and try and get them internship positions so that they would have some work experience before signing up with the college. It was Lambton College. Nobody wanted to hire them because there was a couple of last names, and the people who were local knew what the last names were, and everybody said, no, we're not interested in hiring those people because stereotype. They're drunk, they're going to be late, they're not going to show up, and so forth and so on. So I spent a lot of time at the age of 20 fighting with these employers to try and get these people placements, and we did. And then I decided that probably I should figure out how to teach. So I went back to U of T and got a master's in education, in adult education. And I spent a number of years training people on computer systems because I had a computer sort of background, and I had a teaching certificate, and I had an interest in dealing with adults. I never wanted to deal with kids, particularly in a teaching context. And I did that for a number of years, and I had 5 kids of my own because I did have interest in kids in other contexts. And my oldest kid decided to go to law school. So that was fine. He went to Windsor. He did the dual with Windsor, Detroit. And I would go and I would watch him, and he would be in moots because he liked mooting. And I would be sitting there in the background going, I can do that. I can do that. These people are not making good arguments. I can do that. So that was fine. And I thought, well, but I'm old now. I mean, I have my fourth kid was starting university. And so I was sitting there outside Queens when we went to bring her. And I said to my husband, you know, I think I should do this law thing. And he looked at me and he said, excuse me, you're old. I said, I know I'm old, but I'm going to do the law thing. And he said, well, why don't you do paralegal? Because it doesn't take as long. And, you know, that now paralegals are okay. So I went to Seneca. I have to tell you, Seneca Paralegal was a very, very good course. Because I had a university degree, it was only 1 year, and it was really well taught. The professors were great, and it was really interesting. So I got my paralegal, and I thought, all right, what do I do with this? Well, my father's a lawyer, and he was still working because he worked until he was in his late 80s. And so I went and worked in his office. I liked law. I enjoyed working in law. My son was also working there. Except that the things I wanted to do, I kept running into these walls. No, paralegals can't do that. You have to be a lawyer. No, you can't do that. Paralegals can't do that. You have to be a lawyer. So, all right, fine. So I applied to Osgood with my very, very, very old undergrad grades, which I have to point out were terrible because when I was 20 years old, I was very interested in theater, which meant I stayed up all night. And I was very interested in choir, which meant I traveled a lot. And I basically, my grades were terrible, but I had, you know, many, many years past that. And so I went to Osgood, and Osgood was tremendous fun. There were all kinds of wonderful activities at Osgood. It was a great school. They had a real emphasis on varieties of law. If you wanted to go to some schools, for example, U of T is very business focused, and Western was business focused. And Osgood was sort of holistic. They were really interested in all kinds of different things. And I did a lot of mooting and a lot of standing on my feet and talking, which was tremendous fun. And I had decided I wanted to go into immigration because I really enjoyed that idea of helping people. And so I did the LPP because I really believed in it, and I think it's a great program. And so I applied and did the LPP. And in the LPP, you do 8 weeks of virtual law school, where you do it online and they set you up with a group. And then I applied to be in someone's office. And the person who eventually said that I could work in her office as an LPP student didn't in fact have immigration. So when I applied there, she said, well, we don't do immigration, but I see that you've got a lot of mooting background and so forth. So do you want to do family law and criminal law? I said, sure, why not? So I started working for her. I did not, in fact, do either family law or criminal law. What I ended up doing was civil litigation, and what I really fell in love with, which was wills, estates, and trusts, because I really, really like working with people and doing estate planning. So we had a lot of older clients who would come into the office. A lot of times, someone would die and I would do the probate work, and then the people involved would say, oh my God, that was such a mess. That will was drawn by somebody 20 years ago or 25 years ago. That was such a mess. I don't want to do that for my kids. I want everything nicely organized, and I want everything laid out clearly, and I want to make it as easy as possible on those people when I die. So that became what I was doing. And that's what I've done ever since. Over COVID, I've been doing a lot of pro bono work because a lot of people who were working in nursing homes and things like that were very, very nervous. And so I said, you know, I will be happy to work with you and make sure if I can give you a little bit of peace of mind so that you have your will and your powers of attorney set up in case. So that's what I'm doing. And that's a very long way around. So.
And that basically just goes to show that if you have the motivation to become a lawyer, you'll get there. And I feel like there's no time limit either, because everyone has their own like time frame of life, and that's just how you want to do it, right?
It's true. And the nice thing about being a lawyer is that in fact, you can do it very much longer than you can do a lot of other things. As I said, my father practiced until he was in his late 80s. He had 61 years at the bar. So even if you decide to scoot in very much later in life, after you've done a bunch of other things, which in my opinion actually makes you a better lawyer. Possibly not so much if you want to be on Bay Street doing mergers and acquisitions, but certainly in my field where I'm dealing with a lot of very personal information, I find that it's easier for me to empathize with my clients because I've had a family, I've had mortgages, and I've dealt with a lot of the things that they're dealing with. So when they come to me and they say, this is where I am in my life, a lot of people are at the same place in their lives that I am in mine, or, and I'm dealing with elderly parents as well, and kids and grandkids and that kind of thing. So for me, in my particular area of law, being older is an advantage. It's good. I save money on hair color. Nobody expects me to be young and glamorous. It's okay that I'm gray and, kind of frumpy. That works too. So, yeah, you can go to law from anywhere, from computer science, from zoology, because I've had some clients who really probably should be zoological specimens as opposed to anything else, but I won't talk about that. From theater, from anywhere.
And there's another question. Is there a certain time in law school where you decide what law to practice?
Actually, no. The thing about law school is that law school teaches you theory. Now, if you do, at least at Osgood, you can do electives. And so when I was doing the immigration elective, I got to go and work in an immigration firm for a while, which was really good because it taught me a lot of how actual immigration law works, which is not necessarily how you think it works. But at least at Osgood, so it's the only law school I can really speak to, the popular courses I mean, first year is standard, and you start to look at doing specialist courses in second and third year. And I wanted to do a lot of the courses that involve negotiation and mediation and litigation and that kind of thing. Those courses were at a premium. So when you chose them, when you picked them, you had to put them as your A course if you wanted to get in. I also wanted to do a course in wills and estates with a professor called Black, who is extremely well reputed and has written the book. And I couldn't get into both courses because I couldn't put everything as my A course. So you don't always know. You get into what you can and you have fun with what you can. So law school tends to teach you theory, and when you get out in the actual working world, as a student, as an articling student or an LPP student, you really don't know much about how it works. You get most of that from paralegal, to be honest, because a lot of it is which form do I use, how do I file it, where do I file it, when do I file it, and you can't miss your deadlines because that's really doing a disservice to your client. So it was very helpful for me actually to have the paralegal first, but not everybody wants to go that route. That's a long route and sort of circuitous, but it worked out really well for me.
Yeah, and then we have a couple questions from Daisy. She's asking, what do you like most about being a lawyer? And do you have to have a specialization as a lawyer, or can you practice different kinds of law?
I like dealing with people. I actually like people. I do some estate litigation, and most of what I get out of estate litigation is information I can take back to my will clients to make sure I draft stuff that won't end up in estate litigation. And you don't have to specialize. And in fact, if you do specialize, you are limiting yourself. So if I decide that the only part of law that I want to practice is wills, estates, and trusts, I'm really limiting myself to a boutique situation. If you want to practice what they call community law, you're going to be dealing with things like residential real estate. You're going to be doing some family law. You're going to be doing maybe a little bit of employment law for people who have problems with their employers, maybe some small claims stuff, possibly some minor criminal, and some wills and estate stuff. I don't do any criminal at all. I have absolutely no dealings with that at all. And I don't do real estate. I have done a little bit of employment law, and I have to point out that I have a 100% winning record on small claims, given that I have taken exactly one small claims matter and we did really well. So that's that. But if you want to go into corporate law, you generally don't do anything other than corporate law. A lot of firms are very interested in, especially the Main Street firms, are really the sort of thing that only can deal with corporate law, because to be perfectly honest, corporations have money, big companies have money. And if you're going to start charging $400, $500, $600 an hour as a lawyer, you're not going to get this from, Jane Doe down the street who wants a will. That doesn't make sense. So it depends on the kind of law that you want to do. If you want to do the whole get dressed up in a big suit, make lots of money, work 1 million hours a day kind of law, then really you're probably into corporate law, which a lot of people really enjoy.
Yeah, and someone's asking, is corporate law the most lucrative, and what are the downsides of practicing corporate law? I know you don't specialize in it, but do you have any general understanding?
Well, as I understand it, huge numbers of hours. People who are expected, especially as younger lawyers, first and second year associates, to be working 100-hour weeks. When I did some firm tours when I was a law student, there were a number of firms that had these rooms where they had lots of suits hung on hangers. And I understood the idea was that the firm would send your suit out to be dry cleaned because you never got home. in order to do this. So you were expected to basically spend all your waking hours at the office. And you also tended to have a very large responsibility for your billables. You had to pull in a lot of hours, and the firm had to be able to bill you out at that very large amount of hours, in return for which they were giving you a very much better salary. I've noticed now, when I look at the different websites like Indeed and Glassdoor and those kind of things, there are a lot of firms that are now hiring straight commission. So they're not giving you a base salary at all. They're telling you that when you come in, they'll give you some files, maybe you'll bring in some files of your own, and you will keep a proportion of the money that is billed. And if you're comfortable with that, then you can do that. It means the firm is taking no risk, but that's up to you.
Yeah, and then there's another question. What is your approach or philosophy to winning or representing a case? So how exactly do you go about doing that?
Listening. The first thing you do is you interview the client and you listen. And a lot of times the client wants to take it in a direction that suits their emotional needs, but doesn't necessarily make any legal sense. So you have to have a discussion with them and say, look, I know that this really bothers you, but this is not actually a legally actionable thing. This here, this problem over here, we can deal with legally. So you have to know enough to be able to distinguish the emotional problems from the legal problems. One I can help you with, the other one perhaps someone else is better equipped to help you with. And you have to spend the time. You have to be organized. You have to be willing to talk to a lot of different people and know what you want to get out. The small claims matter that I was dealing with involved a residential renovation. And so it was necessary to understand exactly what had happened, exactly who had done what, exactly what the timeline was, what the complaint was. We ended up speaking to a whole bunch of subcontractors and establishing exactly what each one of them did. And so it's time and it's effort. Sometimes it's research. It may be that when you're going to make your legal argument to the court, normally you have to have cases. So you have to be willing to put in the time and the effort. These days, a lot of it is writing, because a lot of the courts are now asking that things be done remotely, and they would like you to be able to present your case in writing. You also have to present your case in writing sometimes before the judge will make a determination. So you have to be able to write comfortably and perhaps more concisely than lawyers have been accused of doing in the past. A brief was very rarely brief, but it's judges like it better if it's briefer mostly. And mediators, you have to write mediation briefs as well. So.
Yeah, so communication is essential, like from listening to actual written components. Communication is really essential, right?
It is.
Yeah. And so there's another question. Can you elaborate about the many stigmas surrounding law school being expensive and taking years to pay off? Because even like looking online, they are expensive.
They are ridiculously expensive. As in any kind of secondary education, a lot of the scholarships and things that are out there go unused because people don't research them. So your first research project should probably be to check that out. It may be that you belong to a community which will help you out. Some people have been able to get scholarships from whatever community they belong to. I know that some people feel that the best way to pay off a law school debt is to go into, say, corporate law for the first couple of years, pay that off, and then be able to move into law that they may like better, but that doesn't pay nearly as well. And some people choose to do that. So, and I can tell you that if you are over 60, which probably very few of your people are, but if you are, York, that is to say Osgood, and I think Ryerson will take off the amount that you would have spent on an undergraduate degree off your law school tuition. So if you want to wait quite a long time, you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, but that's an amazing incentive, like from our government and from these schools that are encouraging senior populations to get out and work on like maybe what might have been their dream.
That's right.
Mhm.
That's right. So
Yeah. And so another question, if a student's interested in like interning at a law firm or working at a law office before committing to law school, what's the best way that you suggest to reaching out and creating those contacts with people who own firms or work at firms?
well, if you're going to volunteer, it's not as hard to find something because, you know, lots of people like free labor. There are some people who will take advantage of free labor and try to get more free labor. And you want to avoid those people if you can, because they tend not to be the most ethical people. However, if you find a lawyer in your area, it depends on what you want to do. So especially if you're looking at community-based law, so you're looking at someone who may be living close to you. It may also help if you speak a second or third language and you can find someone who is working in that area, because they will often be very happy to have volunteers who also speak the same language as a lot of their client base. So that can be really helpful. There are also legal clinics. And so you can volunteer through community organizations to do that. If you end up volunteering in a law firm and you're not a lawyer or a law student or a paralegal student or a paralegal, chances are that you will mostly be doing things like answering phones, photocopying, scanning. In the firm that I was with, we were trying to change from paper files to scanned files. And every time somebody came in and said they would like to volunteer, the owner of the firm handed them a huge pile of files and said, here, scan these, which is remarkably tedious. But if you're willing to actually read what you're scanning, and if you're interested in sort of keeping your ears and eyes open, you can learn things. And you may decide you like it. On the other hand, you will also realize that this is the most tedious part of law. This is not the fun part. Nobody's going to send you to court. I mean, you can go and observe. And that is also a really fun thing to do, by the way. If you're interested in litigation, now maybe not during COVID, but in normal times, you can go to court and you can watch and you can see what goes on. And that's a really interesting thing to do. You can discover that a lot of civil litigation especially is very boring and very tedious. Somebody may say, oh, we have hundreds of records of where this particular car was. There was a case I was observing, and it involved an airport taxi. And so we had thousands of records of the taxi coming in and out of the airport, and it was read into the record. And everybody fell asleep, including the judge, including the clerks, including the bailiff. Everybody fell asleep. It was extremely boring. So not all law is Perry Mason. In fact, none of it is really Perry Mason. But you can also observe criminal trials if you want to. So it's a good thing to do when the court's open.
And experience isn't a bad thing. The more experience, the better, and you'll grasp a better understanding regardless of what year you're in. Like, it's never too late.
No, it's always a good idea to get as much experience as you can. And depending on the area that you want to be in, you can talk to people who are involved in things. If you're interested in immigration, there are lots of areas where there are organizations for new immigrants. And those people will tell you all kinds of problems about what they wanted to do in terms of immigration, what they were able to do, how they were blocked, what they need, what they look for in a lawyer. Those things are really helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, so there's like no specific undergrad year that you would recommend to those thinking about interning?
Really, again, what Iqbal said was very was a great idea. Follow your own particular interests. If you're interested in business, then business will help you. If you're interested in criminal stuff, then criminology will help you. If you're interested in dealing with seniors issues, you know, you may want to look at something like sociology. You may want to, people are interested in working with issues of underserviced communities, and there are all kinds of undergraduate degrees now in women's studies, in First Nations matters, in all, you know, all kinds of stuff. And so if your undergrad follows your interests, then you can find a legal link to whatever it is that you're interested in. If you're interested in music and that kind of thing, there's entertainment law. There are people who are interested in how entertainers get contracts and what happens with that. So just about anything you can think of is going to be useful to you. It's all just more stuff in your brain. It's great.
Yeah, definitely. One last question. What matters more for getting into law school, GPA or LSAT score, and how hard is the LSAT?
The LSAT depends on your brain. It really does. If you're the sort of person that does puzzles for fun, are you the sort of person who likes logic puzzles? Do you really want to find out who lived in the White House and who has the zebra? That part of the LSAT will be easy for you because it will be fun. If you are the sort of person that has difficulty reading for meaning, then you should practice that. The LSAT is an aptitude test. It's not a test you can study for like a normal test where there's content. So it has to do with your aptitudes. And there are techniques for learning how to do it. The only thing I would remind people on the LSAT is that it is a timed test. So when you get the right answer, move to the next question. Don't go through the other two answers and go, well, maybe it's C or maybe it's D. Forget it. If B is right, just go and move. And that's easier. The LSAT is, there are courses to take if you take it the first time and you find that you fell down on a particular area. But really, a lot of it, you can practice it. There are lots of free materials available, both from LSAT themselves. There's some from the library. You can get lots of practice tests. Just do the practice tests and find out where your own weak areas are, if you have one. And that will be it. And get lots of sleep and be hydrated when you do it. As for GPA, my GPA from Seneca was absolutely brilliant because I was old and I was interested, and it was interesting to me to do it. My GPA from U of T was, I don't even want to tell you because it was before we had GPAs, but it was the sort of thing where they said to me, you know, perhaps you should do less theater. So there you go.
Yeah, so all in all, experience isn't a bad thing. The more you work harder, even for LSAT, do those practice tests because experience is necessary. And even for the law field in general, if you're an undergrad student and you want that more experience to choose your career path, there's nothing wrong with it.
No, there isn't. The other thing you can do, which might be of interest to you, is, you know, they have a lot of these free courses now. You
Yeah, I was looking into
Coursera, and you can go on,
mm-hmm.
you know, edX or whatever these things are. And those are kind of interesting. I've done a couple of them because, hey, pandemic. And it's a free way for you to see if any of this material is really interesting to you. So you can do those too if you want.
So I'll hand it off to Daisy now to put some closing remarks.
Okay, Nancy, thank you so much for being here and for speaking with us, taking the time to chat and answering our questions. You're so inspiring to myself and everyone here today. And thank you, most importantly, for teaching us that it's never too late to pursue your passion. So Thank you. So our next speaker is Everton Torres. He's a paralegal. Everton, can you please tell us the route to become a paralegal and why you decided to go into this field?
Okay, yep. Good morning, you all. Thanks for having me here. I'm really happy to be here today. First of all, I'm gonna talk a little bit about myself. I am an internationally trained lawyer from Brazil, and as well as a licensed paralegal here in Ontario. And when I decided to move to Canada, I was pretty sure that I would use my legal background. And at that time, at the end of the day, it was the only thing that I had done throughout my career, right? So I was pretty sure that I wanted to work within the legal industry, but I wasn't sure what to do to validate my license as a lawyer here, to work as a law clerk or legal assistant, paralegal. And I studied like the options out there, right? As Nancy and Iqra said, way better than me, there are several options out there for anyone who wants to work within the legal industry. So once you know that you want to work with that, so the next step is what to do. So, and then back home, I was planning to do, so what should I do? And I went to the options that I had, and one of them was the LLM for internationally trained lawyers, the paralegal program, law clerk programs. And one thing that I tell to you all is like focus on your studies and be sure that studying you have to be sure that studying it's never enough. So I knew that paralegals can do most of the jobs of law clerks, but law clerks can't do some stuff that paralegal do. So at the end of the day, I was sure that I didn't need to become a lawyer here to work as a lawyer here, because I was on the other side, like as a lawyer, and most of the things that I was doing back home, like a law clerk or a paralegal could do, right? Because I was reviewing documents and working with procurement to the municipal government, for example. And I knew that I didn't have to become a lawyer to work within the legal industry. So, and then decided to take the paralegal program because it was less expensive as well. And that's it. I finished my paralegal program. I started at the end of the paralegal program. You have 1 month of placement, and at the end of the placement, my previous boss offered me a job as a legal assistant, and I passed my paralegal license in September last year, and he promoted me to become a paralegal. I worked as both paralegal and legal assistant. And now I'm working for a new law firm as a law clerk. And to be honest, I'm really happy with that. Like I've been like preparing motions, drafting legal documents like on a daily basis. And honestly, like it's more like what you want to do. You have to search the options that you have and then go ahead. And then if you don't like it, you can follow Nancy's path as well. And at the end of the day, you can like try to become a lawyer. There are a lot of options out there.
Yeah, definitely. So what motivated you to actually study paralegal? Like since you were a kid, or like how did you go about it?
So as I mentioned before, my main goal is work within the legal industry. It's the only thing that I've done my entire career back home, and the only thing that I know what to do, you know what I mean? So, and I knew that paralegal they have limitations. Yes, you need to be aware of that, because you know that paralegal can do paralegals can do small claims court, administrative tribunals, as well as most of the workload of a law clerk. And you have education for that. Like you study.
So can Can you emphasize the difference between a paralegal and a lawyer?
Oh yeah, so lawyer of course can represent anyone anywhere, but paralegals have limitations. Like we only can represent before small claims court, which the monetary jurisdiction limitation is $35,000, and we can represent before administrative tribunals like landlord and tenant board, human rights tribunals, and other administrative tribunals as well. But we cannot do tax law, we cannot do family law, not yet. There will be a change. We're expecting that in the future, paralegals will be able to do family law. And there are other limitations as well. To be sure, the exact ones, you can go to the Law Society of Ontario. They have like a chart and they explain like what are the limitations very specifically.
Yeah, so more specifically, like what kind of exams did you have to take for paralegal and how hard were they?
So it's just one exam. After you finish, once you get your diploma, you have to write your exam. And the exam covers everything that you studied at the paralegal program. So basically you study, like if you attend your classes, you write well your exams, you'll be good to go to write your paralegal exam as well. I would say that for those who study hard during the paralegal program, we won't find it hard at all.
And do you need an undergrad to do paralegal?
Honestly, I don't think so, because I am internationally trained lawyer. So I brought my education from back home and applied to here. So I think I just you need just your high school credentials. I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't have this answer.
No, but that's great because it's like a whole like separate pathway. It's like a way to kind of like fast track getting into the legal field by just doing paralegal after high school and getting that experience.
And yes, 100%, because working as a paralegal and studying during the paralegal program gives you like a broad picture of expect for the future. Because as I mentioned before, if you're like Nancy said, if you're like not sure yet what you want to do for your life, you can work as a paralegal, as a law clerk, as a legal assistant, as a volunteer. And then it's more about you search the options for you. So if someone gives you a volunteer job, as Nancy said, to like scan documents, and in the meantime, you can ask your boss, can I go with you to the court? They say, yes, of course. So it's up more to you, like to be on top of that, on your boss or your career, to find the options. And there are a lot out there.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's just endless. Like how like people think about the legal field, they think about lawyers, but there's like so many different opportunities for everyone to grow in.
Exactly. So as I mentioned before, I'm working as a law clerk, and I'm really, really happy with that. Like things that I'm doing now is like, it's for me at this point of my life, I don't have any complaints about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you said
That's
there's
great.
no big difference between being a lawyer back home and being a paralegal, but can you explain like what the differences are? Like what do you find like a difference?
Okay, so like from the things that I used to do back home, but of course, as a lawyer, I mean, in Brazil or here, you don't have, you will have like the same skills, like not the skills. You won't have the limitations that the paralegal have from home. But I was mentioned about the things that I was doing from home, back home. Okay, so things I was doing, because I was like working more with the government. So I was working more with compliance, like drafting documents and reviewing documents from City Hall that I used to work. But most of the things that I did was that most of the things wasn't related to, it didn't require me to have a lawyer's license. That's what I mean.
And do you enjoy being a paralegal?
Yes, definitely. So I used to work as a paralegal until April, but I used to go to small claims court. I had some settlement conferences, and I used to prepare clients as well. It's more related to litigation at all, like very. I used to work with litigation, but now I'm not working as a paralegal. I'm just working as a law clerk, and of course there are differences. So you're not having meetings with clients, for example, as a law clerk, but because I work for a insurance defense law firm, so we work most with defenses against claims against the insurance company, and we defend the insurance company. So the work already comes like we have to make the defense, so we have to draft it, like, or we have to serve someone. So I used to help with that as well. So we have to prepare motions, things like that, you know. So as a paralegal is quite different because you definitely represent people. Like you have meetings with clients, you prepare clients for trials, or you draft like claims, like, and it's you like to do that, you know. Of course you have supervision, but as a paralegal it's you doing your stuff, you know. No one's gonna sign at the bottom of your claim, only you. So it's a bit different, and from this perspective as a law clerk, where you have like a supervision, you don't sign anything, you know, because of course you're not a lawyer or a paralegal, to a paralegal, which is like at the bottom of the claim, your signature goes. That's different.
If you don't mind me asking, what kind of law did you practice back in Brazil? What area?
So I used to work more as in the procurement government in procurement, like helping because I used to work for a city hall. So, and when I was working there, I used like all city halls, like the corporation of the city needs to buy books for the school, or needs to build a bridge for like to connect some places, and oxygen for the hospital, so things like that. And of course you need a process of hiring these services or buying these goods. So to be sure that the process follow the Brazilian rules, you have to like write a document and draft and review the contract, the agreement that you, so you need to be aware of the whole process. And at the end of the day, you have to report to someone, say everything's fine and good to go, you can sign the agreement, whatever, you know. That's what I used to do.
Thank you so much for telling us and giving us insight. Yeah.
Just so I know you're a law clerk now, but as a paralegal, to my understanding, you have different areas you can practice. Did you also have a specialization, or did you just practice in a broader sense?
You mean as a paralegal?
Yeah, when you were practicing as a paralegal, did you have a specialization like provincial offenses, small claims?
Okay, yes, I used to work with employment law, so I didn't have the option to choose a thing. I mean, I got this internship. That's one thing that Iqra said as well. And during your studies, like during the paralegal program, I was a bit sure about the area that I wanted to work was human rights and employment law. And I would like to work with like both, because there are law firms that do this, like harassment, questions involving harassment and employment law, or discrimination. So, and my focus was in that. So I told I went to Sheridan College, by the way, in Brampton. And once you looking for your placement, there is an officer that helps you to find your job, find that placement for you. And I told her that I was looking for a law firm that is focused in employment and human rights. And then she got me this law firm that I was working for contact. And I called them, sent my resume. They like it. And since I sent my resume and stuff, they offered me the position as a placement student. And after this month of working with them, they liked my work, and they offered me a job to work as a legal assistant because I didn't have my my license at the time. So because I was about to write the license exam 2 months after. So I wrote the exam in July. I passed, got my credentials as a paralegal, and finally he promoted me, and then I started working as a paralegal as well. But then I got a better job offer, and I moved to a new law firm that I'm working for now. Now I'm working with a different field as well. So it's because the offer was very good, and it's a different field, and it's good to change as well. And then you're learning more and more, and then at the end of the day, you can do as Nancy, like, I don't like this, or I like that, I like this, I like that. And then when you reach 60, like, you can like do what you want.
And there's so much room for growth. Like, it's an amazing field.
Exactly.
So I think now we'll pass it off to our next paralegal. Thank you so much. You spoke very informatively and gave us such good insight into a different field.
No, exactly, because I think that my questions and my doubts about what to do when I was in Brazil as a lawyer in Brazil are probably the same as most of you here. What can I do? What can do I need to become a lawyer to work within the legal industry? That's one question. What are the roles of the paralegal, the law clerk, or wherever? There are plenty of options out there, and then you can work with the government, you can work for law firms, you can work, like, it's just search, be sure that what you want to do, and if you don't like it, you have other options out there. You can talk to any one of us, and there are people willing to help out there as well. And one other thing that I would like to highlight as well is what Iqra said. It's about being connect to your community. I am Latino, I'm from Latin America. I connected to my friends. I connected people from Latin America. I met all of them here. So at Paralegal program, I founded a Latino association that we used to help the Latin American students to connect to each other. We had like Spanish classes. I made the first Brazilian carnival of the school. So this kind of things help you to connect with people. So trying to find your community and like try to help people or listen to what people have to say to you. So that's what one very important tip that I would like give to you all.
And if you're passionate about it, you'll find ways to stand out in that field, because you have to make your own way at the end of the day. Because there's
Yes.
a question, are there certain areas of law that are more competitive when it comes to being established and finding work? For example, is it harder to find a job in criminal law than commercial law? And honestly, if you stand out as an individual, you can find your own pathway.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's I mean, I tried to my speech here was about like getting what Nancy said and Iqra said is like merging them, and that's everything that I can I'm able to tell you all. That's everything that I can.
Thank you so much. That was so informative.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So I'll pass it off to Daisy to introduce our next paralegal.
So our next paralegal speaking is Negar Ghiabi. Negar, can you just tell us a little bit of how you became a paralegal and why you chose this profession?
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me. Actually, I have the same situation as Everton. I have a bachelor in law back home, Iran, and also have a master's degree in private law. But you know that my back home has a different legal system from Canada. we have two different legal systems. Some of the country have a civil law and the other one has common law. But Iran is a country who has a civil law and a legal studying and legal system is totally different from Canada. So when I immigrated to Canada, I had two options to make my decision to proceed my way. The first option was to accredit my degree and then have some courses and also pass some exams to accredit my degree and be eligible to pass the bar exam. And the other way was to just register in paralegal program and just proceed my passion to be engaged in legal fields as soon as possible, because as you said, I think that being a paralegal would be a fast tracking option, and it's a kind of short way to deal with legal things, because it's only a 2-year program, and I know that some of the colleges have the intensive program that you can pass 1 year and a half. I mean that the program, and then be eligible to pass the licensing exam. So it was my short way to continue my legal way and dealing with legal system. I enrolled in Sheridan College, and that program that I passed was an intensive one. It lasts 1 year and a half, and I really liked and enjoyed this program. As Nancy said, I think if some undergrad students are not still sure if they are interested in following their passion to be a lawyer or paralegal, just enroll in this program can be a big opportunity to see and to be familiar with different legal perspective and practicing law, and to figure it out if they have interest or passion to continue this long way. I say long way because being a lawyer, it's really long way, and you need more passion to follow your interest in during this long way to be a lawyer. And to me, I think it is worth it. So if you really want to have some wide perspective from legal area, I definitely recommend you to just have a short and brief research about paralegal program. And in terms of financial matter, I think it's very less, very cheaper than enrolling in law school. So, and it's a short way to figure it out how much interest you have to be a lawyer or paralegal.
Yeah, in 2 years to the rest of your life, like 2 years completing this diploma and being able to actually work in the field, for people who actually like are so passionate, it's for them, and you can just get right into it.
Exactly. And I think that if you just attend these kind of courses and programs at colleges, you can make your connections, and you can find your pathway to continue legal studies. And it's really important, especially in the way to be a lawyer, to have connections, more connections as you can, and build your networks. You can just introduce to lots of professors, even lawyers, even there would be more students who already has a legal study at the background, but in different countries. And it's really a big and helpful opportunity to enter this field and make a decision to continue uh, until the end, which is being a lawyer.
There's always going to be someone who's more experienced, more like who has more experience than you, but that shouldn't be like something to push you away. It's more motivation for you to do what you're good at and do what you're passionate about and take these as learning opportunities, regardless of whether you take the college pathway, the university pathway, choose to go to law school. It's all up to you as an individual and how quickly you want to be in the field.
Exactly. For me, it was a short way, and because if I decided to follow a credential way and pass either way to enroll in a LLM program, or just pick some courses by myself and do the self-studying and pass the NCA exams. So it would be at least 3 to 4 years. But a Paralegal program just provided me with the same, not the same, but at least 2 years experience, having academic learning, and then led me to enter to the legal fields and have the practical experience.
Yeah, for sure. And like those 2 years give you that experience to be in the field right away.
Exactly. And because I think it's a mandatory rule for paralegal programs that you need to just pass 1 month's field placement. And it would be a great opportunity for all the students, paralegal students, to make their connections and to figure it out in which area they are more interested in. So for me, thanks to my best friend Daisy, I found a law firm in downtown Toronto, and I spent my field placement there. And after finishing my placement, they offered me a full-time position as a law clerk, and I'm working with them until now for I think more than 1 year and a half, and I'm so happy with my current position and the environment that I'm working with. This law firm is a kind of boutique law firm who is which is dealing with immigration and refugee law and family law and civil litigation. But since as a paralegal, I cannot work in family law and deal with the things, I am a kind of legal assistant in this part, and do some stuff in family law, but under supervision of the lawyer. But I'm most engaging in immigration and refugee law. And as you said, I think paralegal program and its field placement afterwards provide you with a really practical experience. For those who are not still sure they are interested in follow this long pathway, I think paralegal program would be the best option.
And regardless of what pathway you do end up choosing, passion is necessary to actually do well. Like you can study paralegal, you can study law, but if you don't have it in you, like if you aren't passionate, you have to
Yes.
be able to make your own way.
Exactly.
And everyone
That's
here
correct.
that's speaking is so passionate about what they're doing.
I think the most important option is having passion, because you should be so patient to just pass these long years and then be paid off in your life.
And Negar, you
Yeah.
spoke a little bit about networking. Can you please elaborate how important networking is in the legal community and the field?
And as other lawyers and my friends Everton said, I think building networks and connection is the most important factor, especially in legal field. I'm uh, I can see that how lawyers are trying to reach out other lawyers even in different practice in law, because network will connect you in a bigger world, and sometimes you will need your connections to maybe establish your own business, or even to have more offers, and just uh, made a competition between your employers to have a best options in terms of your salary. I think connection networks, especially during your studying time, either in university or college, is very important. Try to build your connections, and try to have a good recommendation letters from your professors and all the lawyers, if you um, have a chance to have some internship time in the law firm.
That's amazing. Connections are so necessary, and that experience is what's going to help you build that.
I think you should be more sociable.
Mm.
Out, I mean that you if you want to make connection, the first things is how to make conversation between you and even other students, and try to be active in the in classrooms, because try to participate in discussions in this world, and especially in this new normal life. Reach out the specialist is a bit easy way, and you can connect to lots of experts via social media and social networks. Try to make your LinkedIn account up to date, and to find the experts via these, I mean, a special networking system. LinkedIn is very important, and Everton can just confirm my point that you can find lots of offers, job offers via LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Like, I think we're going to be hosting a workshop in the coming few weeks about LinkedIn networking, because it's so essential,
Right,
especially as our society grows more into technology, and COVID just pushed us further into technology all of a sudden.
right, that's correct.
I would like to mention something else about LinkedIn. Like people, like, because of COVID, of course, people are reaching people through LinkedIn. Like, hey Everton, hey Negar, hey Daisy, are you open for a new job or a new opportunity? And people like reach you out like very often. So it's like keep your LinkedIn updated and try to connect to people as well. That's like one of the most important things. I'm telling you this because 3 years ago, I didn't know anyone here. Now I have like a connection with people within the legal industry. And a lot of times I can hear like someone is hiring a legal assistant, someone is hiring a law clerk. And that can be an option for even law students that are trying to find a part-time job. Why not get a part-time job to work for a law firm, right? As a legal assistant. That would be amazing for a law student that could like study at the same time work for a law firm. That's a good opportunity.
And you have to make those connections by going on social media and communicating with people who are working in firms, right?
Exactly, exactly. And that would be easy more during this, I mean, virtual world of access to just connect yourself to the person who has more connection. And by reaching out them, you have a variety of connection and networks.
Yeah, of course. And so I'd like to thank you guys so much for joining us. And if anyone who's muted right now, any of our participants wants to add some comments or any questions for our guests that we have with us right now, that would be great.
It's very inspiring, and it answered a lot of the questions that we had. So thank you so much. And it's also not to know that there's a lot of different options in the legal field aside from being a lawyer, because a lot of people don't know this unless they do further research into it. Like, I was not aware of this as well until I did research into it. So thank you. And paralegal sounds like a great option to know, or because it's a fast track way. So it sounds like a good option to know if you really enjoy the legal field first before investing, like Nancy said, and like you guys have said. So thank you for speaking.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend.
And we had a message from Iqra too. She messaged me. She said that if you guys want to reach out to her for volunteer or to seek further guidance, I'll be posting her email in our Facebook group, Precedence for Subsequence. So thank you guys so much for joining us. As Daisy said, you guys are so inspirational, and you guys have really, I hope our participants have benefited from this. And yeah, so thank you so much.